American International presents Cornbread, Earl and Me, the story of a young man with a talent.
Wow, what a shot, 2 for bread.
And a dream.
Come on, Mama, look at it. Because it's going to take us off the street.
He was cool.
What's happening, One-Eye?
Woo! When you going to start running numbers for me?
As soon as I get out of college, we'll have them put it in my pro contract. Cornbread runs for One-Eye in the off-season.
He was smart.
What did you do with them pills, man?
I flushed it down the toilet.
Man, your time has come.
Look, I ain't got time for this. Oh!
He was special.
Hold it high and let it fly.
He's the first boy from this neighborhood to make something out of himself.
Cornbread, Earl and Me. Like Sounder, it's a story of people who never lose their dignity or their pride. Like Claudine, it's a story of family life, full of love and laughter.
Hold on.
Well, Pop, you're in pretty good shape.
He fouled me. Did you see him foul me?
Like no other movie, Cornbread, Earl and Me will touch you.
Shut up. I will not shut up.
And move you.
They're not native. They're savages.
Oh, police!
Oh, my God!
And perhaps even shatter you.
Come back here, boy! Come back here, boy!
Cornbread, Earl and Me.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're going to catch me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, doctor, help me.
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're going to make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first.
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
This is the American International Podcast. I'm Jeff Markin.
I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And on this episode, we're serving up Cornbread, Earl and Me from 1975.
Cornbread, Earl and Me was directed by Joseph Manduke, written by Leonard Lamensdorf, based on the book Hog Butcher by Ronald L. It was produced by Joseph Manduke and Leonard Lamensdorf.
Cornbread, Earl and Me stars Moses Gunn as Benjamin Blackwell, Rosalind Cash as Sarah Robinson, Bernie Casey as Officer Larry Atkins, Madge Sinclair as Leona Hamilton, Lawrence Fishburne III as Wilfred Robinson, Dalmas Rasulullah as Charlie, Antonio Fargas as One-Eye.
It also stars Logan Ramsey as Deputy Coroner, Vincent Martorano as Officer John Golich, Charles Lampkin as Fred Jenkins, Stefan Gierasch as Sergeant Danaher, Stack Pierce as Sam Hamilton, Tier Turner as Earl Carter, Keith Wilkes as Nathaniel Cornbread Hamilton, Hal Baylor as Mr. Wilson, Randy Martin as Shifty, William Upton as Stud, and Eric Kilpatrick as Ace. The movie opens with credits, of course, theme music. It's Cornbread's theme. And Cornbread is dribbling a basketball while he gets ready for school. His parents, Sam and Leona, are bantering over breakfast.
Leona asks Sam if there's anything in the sports page about Nathaniel, but not today. As for Nathaniel Cornbread Hamilton, he looks in the mirror in his room and strokes his chin and calls himself beautiful.
We see he has a lot of trophies. He's been featured in a number of newspaper articles that are pinned to the wall. And then we hear Leona, Cornbread's mom, saying she's going to miss Cornbread when he goes off to college in 2 weeks, but she won't miss that incessant dribbling noise coming from his room.
Yeah, it seems that Cornbread might have an obsession here. He's always got that basketball, and he's always dribbling or bouncing it off the wall or
giving himself a play-by-play narration for everything that he does, as if he were in an actual basketball game.
Leona calls out for Cornbread to get dressed, and he does stop dribbling long enough to throw on his shirt. Now we visit a downstairs apartment, where Sarah Robinson is commenting to her still-asleep boyfriend, Charlie, that Cornbread is pounding around upstairs. She's not complaining, she's just stating a fact. This is just something they deal with living in this neighborhood, I guess, because he's always dribbling that basketball. Charlie might be into doing some pounding himself, but Sarah's afraid her son, Wilfred, who is 12, will find out just what it is that she and Charlie do when they're alone in her room.
She wants him to go upstairs to his apartment where he lives, and he's very grumpy because, well, let's face it, he's horny.
So back upstairs in the Hamilton apartment, Leona asks Sam if he's going to be attending the neighborhood meeting tonight, but he's going to leave that to her. He says he'll go to work and bring home a paycheck, and she can take care of all the rest.
Leona reminds him that she works too, and they share a loving kiss. Sam goes to leave for work, but is blocked by Cornbread, who is trying to start a one-on-one pickup game in the dining room. Leona is not thrilled about this, or about Sam participating. She wants Sam and Cornbread to take that game outside. A basketball doesn't belong in the dining room. It's not food.
And sappy music begins to play on the soundtrack as Cornbread corrects his mother. He says, "Mama, I love you, but you're wrong. This is food, and more. It's food and clothes for you and Pop, and a house as big as a barn. See this thing, Mama? Look at it, because it's going to take us off this street. Ain't that right, Pop?"
That is so elaborate. I didn't write any of that down. Cornbread says goodbye to his mom, and he and his father leave the apartment to go outside.
Leona asks Cornbread as he's going out if he's going to eat something. He says he's not hungry and follows his father out. She calls out that he can't live on orange soda. As Cornbread and Sam head downstairs, Cornbread is bouncing the ball against the wall as he goes. And Sam mentions that in only 2 weeks, Nathaniel will be leaving for college.
I think the neighbors are probably more thrilled about that than anybody else. Out on the street, they meet Huggy Bear, One Eye, the neighborhood pimp, numbers runner, etc. Jack of all trades, I'm sure. One Eye asks Cornbread if he wants to make some real money running numbers for him. Sam tells One Eye to lay off his son. He's got a future ahead of him. Cornbread says after he graduates college, he'll have it put in his contract that he can run numbers for One Eye in the off-season.
Now we're with officers Larry Atkins and John Golich. They're cruising around in their squad car looking for minorities to harass.
Yeah, that's true.
John points out their old pal Shifty pushing around a baby carriage. They decide that's suspicious enough to stop him and investigate.
Larry pulls the car over, and both men get out. Larry chases after the man walking with Shifty, and John goes over to Shifty to give him a hard time.
Shifty puts his hands over his head. John tells him he can put his hands down, but Shifty says he feels safer this way.
When John goes to take the blanket off the whatever's inside the baby carriage, Shifty says, "That's my sister's." And after they start to arrest him, Shifty says, "I told you it was my sister's," but they don't believe him. And he says he's taking it to get fixed for her. At Fred Jenkins' soda shop and general store, Cornbread is making up for skipping breakfast by buying orange soda.
But he finds himself stuck watching card tricks instead.
And being a participant.
The advantage is that he gets a free soda if he's able to guess the correct card. In this case, the 6 of diamonds, and he was successful.
So he gets his soda and runs off to the neighborhood basketball court to play ball with some pals. Watching them are Earl and Wilford. Wilford tells Earl that Cornbread, and he points to him, is his cousin, which Earl does not believe. When Wilford's obnoxious hero worship of Cornbread gets too much for Earl, Earl demands to know why Cornbread is so special.
Earl is kind of a hater. He's from Mississippi. Wilford says that Cornbread is the greatest player in the city, the state, maybe even the country, and Earl says he's seen better players in the South. Wilford says that Charlie told him Mississippi is the lynching state, but Earl tells him that this place has got nothing on Mississippi. Meanwhile, Cornbread keeps playing basketball while his theme song plays.
It is a very specific theme song, and we'll hear it again. Wilford and Earl run to the corner store, Mr. Jenkins' store, to get Cornbread a drink. They're sweaty, and everybody's sweaty. They argue about what drink Cornbread wants.
Wilford says that Cornbread sent them for a root beer, and he's going to buy one for the two of them as well. But Earl corrects him. He's seen Cornbread drink orange pop, grape, and once in a while a Coke, but never a root beer. Fred says he can settle this for them, as he asks Wilford to pick a card. Then Fred asks Wilford if he remembers the card. Sure, says Wilford, 2 of clubs. You're not supposed to tell me, says Fred. Fred takes their money and gives them an orange soda and a root beer and tells them that whichever one Cornbread doesn't choose, Wilford and Earl can split the other one. Crisis solved.
And now we're at the supermarket. Sarah is buying groceries, and Leona is checking her out. We don't know their relationship, but we do know that Wilford and Cornbread are cousins, so there is some family relationship there. They're chatting about Cornbread when the store manager marches up with Wilford. He asks if this is her boy. He's twisted one of Wilford's arms behind his back. Sarah admits to being his mother and asks what's wrong.
The manager says he caught him with a candy bar. Wilford says, Mama, you said I could have it, remember? Leona tells her boss that she was just ringing it up with the rest of her stuff. The manager gives everyone a dirty look, but then he leaves.
So Wilford gets off scot-free until he has to deal with his mother giving him a teary guilt trip about his criminal nature.
Sarah is devastated that she's failed in raising her son. She's in tears. And it doesn't matter if it was valued at 15 cents or $1 million, it's still stealing. And stealing, as we all know, is wrong.
Asterix. And if that wasn't bad enough, there's a knock at the door. It's the welfare worker. She's come to hassle Sarah for her medical report. She's got to prove that she really needs disability for her heart condition.
Wilford goes to wait in the hall, where he can be out of sight, but still listen.
What's really happening here is that the welfare worker is warning Sarah that without this medical report, she can pretty much kiss her welfare checks goodbye. So Sarah does promise to go to the doctor and get something that she can show them.
Then the welfare worker asks about little Wilford, and from the hallway, Wilford sticks his tongue out at her. Sarah says Wilford's fine, and the social worker says she understands how difficult it can be to raise a boy without a father, and it's Sarah's job to keep him away from evil companions. So in the next scene, Sarah is at a get-together with Charlie, Sam, and Leona, and a few others, and they're all laughing at the phrase evil companions, and that someone actually used it in conversation. They break off, and Charlie asks Sarah how she's feeling. Sarah says her heart feels a lot better now.
Charlie walks Sarah home, and it's clear that they have mismatched expectations of this relationship. Sarah likes to keep things light, but Charlie is thinking maybe marriage one day?
The problem with marriage is it's a complicated thing because it would affect her welfare checks. So she wants to know who will pay the rent if they were to move in together. He says he will, of course. He'll just have to get a better job. And he's been trying, after all.
Promises, promises. They return to Sarah's apartment, where Earl and Wilford are watching a movie. Charlie is feeling amorous, but Sarah wants to maintain decorum in front of the kids. Charlie doesn't like this, and he throws a bit of a tantrum.
He wants her to make up her mind. It's always, Charlie stay, Charlie go. What's he supposed to do, go upstairs to his rotten bed alone? Charlie angrily storms up the stairs.
I guess he was supposed to go upstairs to his rotten bed alone. The next day, Cornbread and Wilford are hanging out playing basketball, of course, at the rec center where Cornbread works. Cornbread's trying to teach Wilford how to shoot when two toughs come in. This is Stud and Ace.
Shoot a basketball.
I guess I should say that, because it's going to come up later.
They kick the ball back past Cornbread and Wilford. Wilford shouts, hey, and goes to retrieve it. Cornbread tells Wilford that the lesson is over for today and to go wait for him in the locker room. One of the guys asks Cornbread what he did with the pills that he had found in the locker room. They were worth a lot of money to him. Cornbread tells Stud that he flushed them down the toilet. He told them he didn't want them bringing that stuff in here.
Wrong answer.
And they better leave because Mr. Wilson will be back at any moment. But Stud doesn't care about Mr. Wilson. If that's the way you feel about it, says Cornbread, gently laying down the basketball and readying for a fight.
Stud draws a knife and Cornbread picks up the basketball. He uses it as a shield between him and the knife, and it gets stabbed. And then suddenly Mr. Wilson enters with Wilford running behind him, and our two tough guys leave.
Mr. Wilson tells Cornbread that he wouldn't want anything to happen to him.
Cornbread jinxes himself by saying, ain't nothing going to happen to me, Mr. Wilson. The college needs me too bad.
He turns around and throws his ball through the basket.
Is that how you say you made a basket?
That's how I say it.
In Jeff language?
He swishes.
Nothing but net. Now we're with our friendly neighborhood officers, John and Larry. It is absolutely pouring, and the two get a call about a gunshot victim. It's nearby, so they turn around and head that way. On the playground, Cornbread decides that the rain is too much and offers to buy the kids a soda.
Officers John and Larry have arrived at the scene of the alleged crime. Officer John is interviewing a witness while Larry is looking over the victim.
He's just kind of patting her head as she lies there bleeding.
The witness describes the perpetrator as black and very big. Larry says the victim is still breathing and he will stay with her until the ambulance arrives while John goes over the perpetrator.
At Mr. Jenkins' soda shop, lots of kids are sheltering from the rain. Jenkins chases off all the ones without money, though. Only Cornbread, Earl, and Wilford remain. Up on the roof of the apartment building, Officer John bursts out of the doorway and gets drenched by the rain as he patrols the rooftop, looking for the assailant.
He has his gun drawn, and he's searching for a man of whom he has only the vaguest description.
That will be important.
Back down in the general store, One Eye comes in. Cornbread commends him on his threads, and Earl and Wilford are impressed with them as well.
His eye patch even matches his pinstripe suit.
One Eye once again suggests that Cornbread should be running numbers for him.
One Eye tries to nonsensically defend his line of work by saying if God didn't want him to run numbers, he wouldn't have invented the wheel.
And Fred tells One Eye that Cornbread will be leaving in 2 weeks, and he's the first one to make it out of this neighborhood and make something of himself. One Eye is a little offended, so Fred corrects himself. Something legal.
Stop trying to derail his promising basketball future with a life of petty crime.
Back on the rooftop, Officer John is still searching for the perpetrator. He sees a man going down the fire escape and yells for him to stop.
This is a tall black man wearing a gray sweatshirt. And we cut back to Mr. Jenkins' shop, where the boys are speculating about how fast Cornbread could run home in this rain. Could he really run between the raindrops? The opening bid from Wilford is 10 seconds. Cornbread counters with more like 25 seconds. Cornbread is going to have to prove this, though.
One Eye says that he'll never do it in 25 seconds, but Wilford bets that he can. Cornbread says they can bet for a bottle of pop, and he gives the money to Fred to cover the cost of the bet.
Back at the apartment building, John spots someone coming out of the side door of the apartment building. He pulls his gun, but it's just Officer Larry. John asks Larry if he saw the perpetrator. John said he lost him in the rain.
So back at the store, Cornbread has everyone come outside in the rain to watch him run home.
Back at the apartment building, the cops finally spot the gray sweatshirt guy and give chase. Cornbread, also wearing a gray sweatshirt, runs off as the boys count how long he's taking. And a 1. And a 2. As this is going on, we see that the cops are getting closer to where Cornbread is. There's a series of quick cuts here. It's cutting back and forth very fast.
Cornbread runs across the street, past a parked garbage truck. The officers yell for him to stop, but he keeps running. So naturally, they have no other choice but to shoot him in the back. The bottle of orange soda flies into the air and comes crashing down into the street.
Mr. Jenkins, Earl, and Wilford are horrified. "Oh my God," yells a shocked Mr. Jenkins. Wilford starts screaming Cornbread's name, and Earl is stunned into silence. Wilford takes off running and gets to Cornbread's body just as the cops finally get there.
Fred grabs onto Wilford and tries to drag him and Earl back inside. "Don't show your faces," he says. But Wilford breaks free and runs towards Cornbread.
The cops are approaching Cornbread's body, and just as they get there, so does Wilford. John grabs him as Larry examines the body. Also on the scene, the man in the gray sweatshirt that they have been chasing. He's just free to stand around and gape now that somebody else has died for his alleged crimes.
Larry declares Cornbread dead. Wilford shouts out, "No, he isn't!" But he is. Then Wilford runs up and down the street, shouting to the whole neighborhood, "Cornbread's dead! They killed him! He wasn't doing nothing!" He successfully riles up the crowd to the point where the officers are in danger.
Because he points them out and says that they're the murderers.
Larry is sitting in his squad car to radio in when a brick is hurled at the windshield of the squad car. The windshield shatters in a way that windshields usually don't, and Larry finds himself with glass pellets all over his face.
By this time, the crowd has become a mob, and they're overwhelming the two cops. Both are subjected to punches, kicks, and one person in the crowd draws a bat, or at least a big stick. And then Sarah appears. She's walking down the sidewalk looking for Wilford, calling his name.
She finds him and tells Wilford that they've got to get out of here. Everyone's gone crazy.
More cops have arrived, and they're also beating the crowd back.
Wilford tells her that they killed Cornbread. She says no. Wilford points to the body on the ground and says, "That's him, Mama. That's Cornbread."
Sarah doesn't believe Wilford that Cornbread's dead. So Wilford goes to Cornbread's body, which had been covered up when Officer John had displayed a little decorum, grabbing a raincoat from the car and covering up the body. But Wilford pulls the raincoat off of Cornbread's face. When she sees that her nephew is dead, Sarah is distraught, and she wonders why. She asks, "Why'd you let them do it to us?" I don't know who she's asking. God, maybe?
Now Sam and Leona have had to go to the morgue to identify the body. They're shown his image on a television monitor. They confirm it's Cornbread and sign papers to that effect. Then Sam asks if they can have him now.
It's pretty devastating. Now some time has passed. Sarah and Wilford are taking a walk. Wilford comments that the streets are cleaner than ever now, but Sarah says they can't wipe out Cornbread that easily. Wilford says he's never playing basketball again, but Sarah says he will one day, and that the cops will never murder him the way they did Cornbread.
"Who's going to stop him?" Wilford asks. "You and me," she says. "They got Cornbread, but they're not going to get you. We're going to get you out of here."
Whatever it takes.
Now we're in the office of Benjamin Blackwell. Sam and Leona are looking to hire an attorney. Blackwell assumes that they want to bring an action against the city for the wrongful death of their son, but they don't really care about money. They only want to clear their son's name. He wasn't the one who nearly killed that woman. He was just at the store drinking a soda. They only want the police to admit that they made a mistake.
Benjamin says the paper said he assaulted and nearly killed that woman. Sam said that's a lie. Benjamin asks why he was running from the cops then, and then they tell him the true story. He was running home in the rain, innocent of all charges. Leona further wants an admission of guilt from the police. You'd have an easier time collecting the cash, Benjamin says. They're not going to admit anything, so they're going to have to go to court. He recommends they think it over, but first there's going to be an inquest, and then they can file a civil suit, and that it's going to be expensive. Benjamin says the city has received a lot of bad publicity from the shooting, so they can expect everyone to close ranks to protect each other. They'll need witnesses, and Sam says they have them. But Benjamin says that they'd be surprised how differently people act when they have to testify in a legal matter.
Leona places something on Benjamin's desk, then cries into her husband's shoulder. She tells Benjamin that that is a plane ticket. They were supposed to drive Cornbread to the airport that morning so he could fly to school. She says they'll cash it in as part of Benjamin's payment. Benjamin says that isn't necessary, and Leona says that this is the way they want it.
Now we're with Sarah and Wilford. They're on a Ferris wheel. She's trying to cheer him up, and maybe it's starting to work. She points out the street where they live, as if she could see it from the top of the Ferris wheel.
Wilford doesn't seem too into this, though.
And now Benjamin Blackwell visits Officer Larry, who's in the hospital. Larry says Benjamin shouldn't be there, but Benjamin reminds him that they grew up together, at least until Benjamin was 10, and Benjamin thought that Larry was a straight cop. He asks if Larry is still planning to be a teacher. Larry says yes, but it took 6 years of night school classes to get there.
Then Benjamin gets down to business. He wants to know about the case. Larry tells him that the statements have been made and papers have been filed, and if he wants to know more, he can read the reports. If there is any discrepancy in those reports, the whole story falls apart, so it's better just to leave things alone.
Larry says that John might be having a moral crisis over what they did, but Larry knows that they shot the right guy. Larry surmises that John knows he was right, but the headlines about good kid and police brutality are affecting his conscience, but that, being white, John can afford to have a conscience. Benjamin wonders what color has to do with it. Wrong is wrong. But Larry's not swayed by all those scholarship stories.
And that Cornbread is a local hero. Larry says that means he was just a bad kid who hadn't been caught yet. Benjamin says he's got witnesses, and they say Cornbread was in a store drinking soda pop when the incident occurred. Larry gets defensive. So that means I'm lying, right? Benjamin tries to get him to calm down, saying that he's sure Larry thought he was doing the right thing. He might have even done the same thing himself. But Larry isn't having that, coming from a big-time lawyer in his fancy suit. He doesn't know what it's like having to comb the streets with maniacs on the loose.
Benjamin reminds Larry of the wound he received on the street when he was 14. Larry says that he healed up real good, and the two bicker about how their two worlds diverged when Ben got his ass out of the neighborhood, and whether it matters or not. Benjamin accuses Larry of acting this way because the people he wants to educate turned on him, but Larry says that they're savages and his job is to keep them penned in their own neighborhood so they don't escape to kill other people. Good people. Benjamin says he understands why the neighborhood turned on Larry. They see people get gunned down all the time, but this time they knew for sure that it wasn't deserved. Is Larry going to tell his future students that they're just savages? Larry says it's Ben and his ilk that tell the neighbors that. Ben thinks that the people have no chance to get fairness when Larry thinks that way. Larry says they all have the same chance that everyone has to get out, and then he orders Ben to get out of his room.
Now we're back at the carnival, and Sarah says she likes the Ferris wheel the best. Wilford just wants to talk about Cornbread, and Sarah is trying desperately to distract him. She convinces him to ride the Cyclone with her. It keeps her young, she says. So we see them on the Cyclone, and she's screaming like a maniac, and Wilford's holding her hand and looking kind of bored.
The two of them find themselves in the funhouse part of the carnival, and they look in the mirrors and make their images look ridiculous, and finally, Wilford laughs.
Now we're back at Fred Jenkins' general store, and a couple of cops are questioning Fred on his agreeing to testify.
It's two new cops, and they're from downtown.
Yeah, they're not uniformed officers. But Fred says sure he's going to testify. Why not? After all, he saw the whole thing. He's a witness. Then one of the cops places a few joints on the counter and asks Fred if he's going to stick with that story. Store owners who keep a supply of marijuana around for the kids aren't always trustworthy. And this reminds Fred that he didn't see anything.
He also says that Cornbread was one of those wrongdoers. The cops take their joints back and smugly promise that they'll be back if necessary. After they go, Mr. Jenkins breaks down, calling the cops dirty, rotten sons of bitches. They're railroading Cornbread out of a fair hearing.
We see Wilford is also getting a visit from a couple of plainclothes policemen.
This officer calls himself Mr. Johnson. He's interrogating Wilford, and even though he's a black cop, that's not going to help Wilford very much here.
Also standing by is Sergeant Danaher. Wilford asks why he wants him to lie. Mr. Johnson, who happens to be the precinct captain, says that they're not asking him to lie, they're just asking him not to say what happened. And that's not the same as lying. Yes, it is, says Wilford. His mama always told him that if you see something bad and you don't say something about it, it's as bad as lying, and Sarah nods in agreement.
This angers Johnson. He stands up to threaten the little boy and says the whole city is behind them. If they want to take on an entire city, they should go for it. And then he says he's going to sick Sergeant Danaher on Wilford. and he better give the right answers or else. And then he looks at Sarah and says that she can kiss her welfare checks goodbye. He tags in Danaher and then he leaves.
So Danaher sits down and he too tries to get a statement that they can live with. He asks Wilford what he knows about the incident. Did he see Cornbread the day that he was shot? Wilford said yes, and Danaher tells him that's the wrong answer. He pulls Wilford up and starts shaking him, and Sarah comes to defend her son, telling Danaher not to touch him. He smacks her, sending her sprawling across the couch. Wilford runs out of the apartment and starts calling up to Charlie. Charlie comes downstairs with a gun in his hand. Danaher pulls on his badge and tells Charlie he's the police. Wilford is screaming that the man hurt his mama, and Sarah comes out holding a knife and charging at him.
Her eyes are rolled back in her head. She looks insane.
Charlie holds her back. Danaher decides it's time for him to leave, and Charlie pushes him down the stairs. By this time, the commotion has brought out all the neighbors, and they advise Charlie to get out of there, because the cops are going to be back and they're going to beat him bad.
Charlie gives his gun to one of the neighbors, tells him to hide it. Then he tells Wilford that this is all his fault and threatens him with an ass whooping if anything happens to Sarah. Now we're at Sam and Leona's apartment. Sam is on the phone with Benjamin. Sarah and Leona are sitting at a table talking. After Sam hangs up the phone, he tells Sarah and Leona that Benjamin will do what he can with this report of police brutality and intimidation. Sarah asks where Wilford is, and Leona says he's probably out playing. Sarah panics. At a time like this, he's outside? Sarah peeks out the window for a second, then decides that Wilford's run away, despite Leona's reassurance to the contrary.
Sarah explains that Wilford thinks he's making trouble for her on account of what Charlie had said to him, but Sam and Leona try to convince her that everything will be fine.
Sam incorrectly declares that no cop would beat a 12-year-old boy. If only. Back with Benjamin, in the parking garage of his office, he goes to his car and finds Wilford waiting in the front seat. Apparently, Wilford did a little bit of sleuthing, using Benjamin's business card to find his office and a garage attendant to find his car.
Benjamin is surprised, but he quickly realizes who Wilford is. Benjamin tells him that he's headed to the police station to straighten this out. Wilford starts to run, but Benjamin holds him back. They're going to talk this out. Wilford says that he told Mr. Hamilton what he saw. Benjamin tells Wilford he did the right thing. Then Wilford explains how this has caused all sorts of trouble for his mother, so he's going to run away. That way he won't have to lie, and they can't take his mama off welfare. And he wants Benjamin to help him find a safe place to hide. But Benjamin says that would make him the liar, and he's sure Wilford wouldn't want to make a liar out of him.
Now we're in Sarah's apartment, where we see Benjamin depositing a sleepy Wilford onto the sofa bed. Benjamin tells Sarah that they made a deal with the police. If they don't press charges against Danaher, the cops won't press charges against her or Charlie. Sarah is very pleased by this. She sends Wilford off to get ready for bed. Then Benjamin says that Charlie can come home now. She tells him Charlie doesn't live here, and they get a little bit flirty. She asks him if he wants a coffee, and he says no, but maybe later, and she agrees. Wilford re-enters the room, and Benjamin leaves. Wilford correctly notes that she likes Benjamin, and that it's okay. He does too.
Sarah sits down next to Wilford and tells him that she knows he was going to run away to protect her, but she wants him to know that there's nothing more important to her than him. She wants him to do whatever he thinks is right, whatever that may be.
Now, the third act begins with an inquest. The deputy coroner is leading the inquest, which operates very much like a trial. Leona's on the stand, and the coroner just wants some basic facts about Cornbread. And this consists of his age and occupation.
When she answers student, the coroner takes that to mean unemployed. Benjamin stands up and says Nathaniel was scheduled to start college in 2 weeks.
And he had a part-time job at the rec center. So unemployed is kind of a slur here, and they're not going to settle for it.
The coroner nods and makes a note. So this is all they need for Leona's statement. There's a $27 fee, but she can sign a waiver instead of paying it. But she stands up and takes the money out of her purse.
A stunned audience member, there's a lot of people watching this, comments, "You mean they're going to make her pay for them killing her son?" This makes John and Larry, who are also there, look kind of angry and embarrassed.
John turns around at that comment, but Larry holds him back. Then someone else says they'll be making them pay for the cops' bullets. And this time Larry turns around and John holds him back.
We got a bunch of hecklers.
The coroner repeats to Leona that she isn't required to pay. She can instead sign the waiver. But Leona chooses to silently complete the financial transaction instead.
The coroner tries to defend this rule, saying that it's just the law, not his personal choice. and offers his condolences, but Leona just returns to her seat without acknowledging that. And now it's time for Sergeant Danaher to testify. He says that an informant told him that Nathaniel Cornbread Hamilton was a gang member, and that he's robbed many people and committed many acts of violence. Coroner says, just describe the incident. He's pretty frustrated already. And then Danaher tells them what happened from the cop's point of view.
He says officers Larry and John responded to an incident and pursued the suspect. They chased him down and they saw a shiny object in his hand they thought to be a gun, and the officers ran out into the street to avoid shooting innocent people. Sam and Leona shake their heads in disgust.
Yeah, good one. The coroner urges Danaher to continue. Danaher says that they yelled at the subject to stop, and when he didn't, they shot and killed him. The coroner thanks him and turns the witness over to Benjamin, who makes Danaher confirm that the cops lost sight of the man that they were chasing. Only briefly, says Danaher when confronted with the idea that they shot the wrong guy. Anyway, they said stop, and he didn't. And then Ben asks, well, what about the garbage truck?
Wasn't there a garbage truck on the street making so much noise that no one would have been able to hear the shouts to stop? Danaher says he don't know nothing about no garbage truck. So Blackwell changes his line of questioning. He gets Danaher to confirm that it was a dark, rainy day, and that they saw a shiny object in the hands of someone running away from them. Then he asks if a weapon was ever found at the scene. None was ever found.
Did anyone else see a gun? Nope. Did anyone say what he did have in his hand? Danaher admits that a kid said that it was just a bottle of pop. Orange pop, right? Danaher demurs and says, well, if you say so. Benjamin says it doesn't matter what he says. He's not the one under oath. He asked Danaher to check the witness testimony. And Danaher must sheepishly admit that they lost the testimony. Ben snarks that this is evidence of police incompetence.
The coroner tells Benjamin to relax. The witness in question is in the room and he can simply give another statement. Benjamin says that is all for this witness. He doesn't wish to waste the coroner's time with a liar. And Danaher looks very offended at this accusation.
Well, the shoe fits.
Next on the stand is Mr. Watkins. He was the man in the garbage truck at the time of the incident. His story is that he was reading his report and didn't see what happened, and the truck was making so much noise he didn't hear what happened.
And then Ben says, so that means you're going to say nothing. And Watkins agrees. That's right. And next, Fred Jenkins is on the stand. He lies and says that he saw nothing. He was back working. This causes Wilford to heckle him that he's a liar. He also claims that Cornbread wasn't in his store at all that day.
From his seat, Wilford can't believe what is happening.
And neither can Sam. He stands up and starts in on Jenkins. What did Cornbread ever do to deserve this betrayal? The coroner tells him to be quiet. He threatens to and then sends the marshal over to remove Sam.
Sam is still hollering and Officer John stands up and tells Sam to calm down. But John's face is the last one Sam wants to see right now. You did it. You killed him. The coroner asks once again for Sam to be removed, but Benjamin steps in. Nathaniel was his son, he says. He asks that Sam be allowed to stay, and the coroner concedes.
And next, Earl is called to the stand. His father stands up and tries to beg off on his behalf, but the coroner rudely tells him to sit down and shut up. Earl takes the stand, and the coroner immediately starts in on him. But Earl is paralyzed into speechlessness, and this makes the coroner spitting mad. And once again, his dad tries to intervene. Earl freezes when he gets scared, and besides, he doesn't know anything.
The coroner asks Benjamin where he's found these witnesses. 3 people were called up, and 3 people don't know anything about the case. Benjamin says that his witnesses were intimidated, and if they were allowed to testify freely, they would all say that Nathaniel Hamilton was a good person and that he was at Jenkins' store at the time of the incident.
Danaher stands up to object to this assertion, and the coroner cautions him to not make charges he can't prove.
Benjamin goes on to say that they don't believe the shooting was done intentionally. It was a case of mistaken identity. But the police just won't have it that way. They're afraid of the truth for some reason.
John seems surprised by this idea.
The coroner is becoming exasperated. I wish you would stick to the facts, he says.
Benjamin tries to get Earl to admit that he saw the shooting, but Earl is just sobbing on the stand. Ben pats him on the cheek, and in the audience, John says to Larry that they've got no case. Earl is dismissed, and Wilford is called to the stand. Someone says they got to him, too.
Sarah tells Wilford that she knows that he will do what he thinks is right. And in that moment, he will be a man, and he will be a man for the rest of his life.
Wilford takes the stand, and after getting a nod from his mom, very calmly explains what actually happened on that day. The game, the rain, the pop, One Eye, the other pop, the bet, the 4 of them, Wilford, Earl, Mr. Jenkins, and One Eye, watching Cornbread run home, The counting, the cops, the yelling, the garbage truck, the shooting. Wilford says they killed Cornbread and he wasn't doing nothing. He was just running home.
The coroner says that someone is lying. Larry and John exchange looks.
Larry comments to John that that kid has to be lying.
Benjamin asks Wilford if he knew of Cornbread being in a gang. Wilford said he didn't have time for that. He was always playing basketball. He could always hear the bam, bam, bam of the ball against the backboard. Sometimes he'd be laying in bed and he'd hear that bam, 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 and he knew it was Cornbread and it would put him right to sleep.
The coroner dismisses Wilford and demands that the two officers testify. Well, just one of them needs to, and so he picks Larry Atkins. The coroner tries to hurry this along. Does Larry agree with the report of the investigating officer? After a little bit of dithering, Larry says that he's starting to believe Wilford's testimony. Danaher objects, but Larry continues that he has to conclude, God help them, that they shot the wrong man.
Danaher stands up and says there must be some mistake because Larry has signed a statement and they have it on file. But the coroner says the hearing is closed. Danaher charges at the coroner. You don't believe all this crap, do you? You've had it, Sergeant. The next person they're going to be investigating is you. And everyone solemnly leaves the courtroom.
Sobbing, Sam and Leona leave the courtroom. They make a point of snubbing Fred Jenkins as they walk past him.
And that can't be too good for business. In a hallway outside the courtroom, Danaher charges at Larry and John. He's not going to let two lousy cops ruin him.
He demands that John do something, so John does. He groin punches Danaher, who sinks to the ground.
Now it's night, and Wilford is shooting baskets on the basketball court. Earl comes over and is surprised that not only is Wilford not angry with them, but that they're still friends.
Wilford says, of course, they're blood brothers, aren't they? Earl takes the ball and underhand tosses it at the hoop. Wilford says no. Cornbread taught him to shoot it like so, and after that demonstration, Earl makes a basket. Then we hear the very weird Cornbread theme again as credits roll, and that's the end.
You are listening to the American International Podcast, where we're discussing Cornbread, Earl and Me from 1975.
According to an article published in the Chicago Tribune in December of 1987 that gave us a story of how Cornbread, Earl and Me was made, financial advisor Melvin Pearl was working as a tax attorney for real estate developer Leonard Lamensdorf in 1972, when Lamensdorf told Pearl about his novel, Hit the Open Man, which would make a great film, he thought.
Pearl contacted a former classmate who helped him set up a meeting at AIP. AIP liked the story and offered to fund half of the picture's $800,000 budget. Lamensdorf and Pearl raised the remaining $400,000 from Chicago, Illinois-based investors. Although Lamensdorf received executive producer and screenwriting credits, his book is not credited. Instead, the credit goes to Ronald L. Fair's novel, Hog Butcher, as source material.
Yeah, we don't know why. A Philadelphia Daily News article published in January of 1984 said that the basketball-playing character Nathaniel Cornbread Hamilton was partly based on Darryl McCrae, a former graffiti artist who had since renounced graffiti and was working with troubled adolescents.
Keith Wilkes, who would later go by the name Jamal, was nearly 6 feet 7 inches tall. He was an All-American player on the University of California Los Angeles Bruins basketball team, and as a Golden State Warrior, was the NBA's 1974 Rookie of the Year. In an interview in the San Francisco Examiner the night of the film's debut, Wilkes said he got the part because producer Lenny Lamensdorf contacted UCLA coach John Wooden about the possibility of him playing the role. Coach Wooden received the script, read it, and since he liked it, he called Wilkes to tell him about it.
In the interview, Wilkes said that he liked Cornbread, Earl and Me, and that he never thought he would make a movie like this, which was definitely not trash and not even necessarily a black film, though it was set in a ghetto. Wilkes said that he had seen exactly one blaxploitation film, Superfly, and that was enough. He's quoted as saying, I think there's more to black people in black neighborhoods than cocaine and pimps.
Though Wilkes said in several interviews he would like to keep acting, he only had one acting credit after Cornbread, a guest appearance on the series Trapper John M.D.
Cornbread, Earl and Me marks the film debut of Lawrence Fishburne, credited in the movie as Lawrence Fishburne III, and in promotional materials as Larry Fishburne III.
Daily Variety announced in March of 1975 that American International Pictures had acquired distribution rights to the film.
The United Negro College Fund sponsored several benefit premieres, with the Los Angeles, California benefit set to take place at the Screen Directors Guild on May 15, 1975, according to an article in the LA Times published in April of 1975.
Box Office Magazine reported that the film was cited in the Congressional Record by Representative Thomas M. Reese of California, who urged theater owners to screen the film, which portrayed with great human dignity and drama the hopes, the aspirations, and the warm family values of a Black community.
In June of 1975, Cornbread, Earl and Me was honored by the Los Angeles City Council for excellence in community service and entertainment.
AIP's press book advised theater owners to capitalize on the obvious: Keith Wilkes' status as an elite basketball player. They recommended a shooting contest and a dribbling race for kids, with a local sporting goods store providing prizes like basketballs.
Naturally. He also suggested cooperating with the police, hosting a pre-show demonstration where officers could show moviegoers how to act when approached by the cops. Yikes.
Taglines for Cornbread, Earl and Me include: "It was a heavy town for someone with a light touch, and Cornbread was going to split out of there the only way he knew."
"Hold it high and let it fly" was his motto, but if you cut him, you cut yourself some big trouble.
"We're going to lick the world."
Yuck. That San Francisco Examiner article that we talked about earlier reported that Wilkes' girlfriend and future wife, Joy Bramlett, cried during Cornbread's death scene, but mostly because of how it affected the character of Wilford. And the reporter said that Wilkes was seen holding his hand over his mouth during his death scene.
A December 1976 LA Times news brief reported that roughly 100 youths rioted at a West LA movie theater, which was playing Cornbread, Earl and Me, Cooley High, and JD's Revenge. The rioters threw projectiles through the screen, broke windows, destroyed theater seats and the box office. They also injured 2 police officers, but the motive for the riot was undetermined at the time of reporting.
During the riot, older members of the audience got on stage and appealed to the youth to settle down, but that didn't work. After the theater was closed, rioters spilled out onto Pico Boulevard, where 6 juveniles were arrested. An item in the May 30th, 1975 Daily Variety reported that Cornbread, Earl and Me took in $83,512 in box office receipts at New York City's Penthouse Theater in its first week of release. And by its third week of release, it had taken in $228,000 from screenings in 12 cities. In 1987, an article in the LA Times called Cornbread, Earl and Me ultimately a box office success. And at that point, the film had taken in over $2 million, according to a book called American Film Distribution, The Changing Marketplace by Suzanne Mary Donahue.
Kevin Thomas in the LA Times wrote that if Cornbread, Earl and Me does not live up to its promising beginning, it is redeemed by some powerful performances and some searing insights into what it's like to grow up Black, but said it was unfortunate that writer Leonard Lamensdorf didn't develop the premise more fully or credibly. But he also wrote, Cornbread is strongest in the suggestion of how a boy like Cornbread could become a neighborhood hero, a symbol of hope. The film's chief accomplishment is in showing the impact of his death upon his younger pals.
Martin Levine in Newsday wrote, Cornbread's message of dignity and honesty isn't vitiated by race baiting or excessive violence. Indeed, it marks an unlooked-for advance for American International Pictures, hitherto noted for its profitable sleaze. He finished his review saying, I realize I'm praising Cornbread, Earl and Me for being the equivalent of a decent TV show, but in the context of B-movies, that's still praiseworthy.
Howard Coffin in the Philadelphia Inquirer wrote, If you haven't heard about Cornbread, Earl and Me, blame it on the executives who slid this one into the theater as though it were just another hell up in Harlem. It's not, and it deserves to be seen, particularly by kids of all races and by white grown-ups who have a hard time coming to grips with the humanity of Black people.
Over at the Philadelphia Daily News, Joel Baltaki called Cornbread, Earl and Me a, quote, ghetto soap opera, where emotions are worked over with a heaviness even daytime TV is abandoned. Still, there are some admirable elements in the new PG-rated family film, mostly in the form of performances, plus a few incredibly affecting moments in which quiet truths are conveyed.
Francis Taylor in the Jersey Journal wrote that Cornbread, Earl and Me is an unpretentious movie that offers real Black people struggling upwards against the odds, trying to raise children who will respect moral principles in spite of their daily experience of the lack of morals in society outside their homes. She concluded by saying that Cornbread, Earl and Me has no unrealistic happy ending. It shows that people who resist fear in order to do the right thing learn something of enormous value.
Lowell Cohn of the Peninsula Times-Tribune called Cornbread, Earl and Me overdone, saying that it was hopelessly naive. It depicts a world where good people are nothing less than angels, and the villains are the kind who would beat their own mothers. Cohn dinged Wilkes' acting, saying that one suspects, for now at least, he couldn't tackle a part that called for much more.
The Detroit Free Press review called Cornbread a feast of mediocrity, saying it was not a blaxploitation film, but neither is it a sensitive reflection of part of the Black experience. Cornbread avoids some, but not all of the blaxploitation formula traps, but has a more interesting and sophisticated story than most films made for the Black market. The reviewer praised Fishburne's and Cash's performances, but said of Wilkes, He does just fine when he's bouncing a basketball. When he opens his mouth, one becomes thankful he dies early in the picture. The reviewer also said one could believe the soundtrack was headed straight for the New York discos if only the lyrics weren't so inane. So, Cheryl, we saw that the reviews for Cornbread, Earl and Me were very mixed. What are your thoughts on the film?
Well, reading those reviews, I kind of found something to agree with in all of them and something to disagree with often too. And my view of the film, watching it, is that there is the germ of a really good movie in here, but unfortunately it was kind of turned into an after-school special.
Well, I have to wonder, because this is based on a novel, if there's just more explanation of what's going on in the actual story that just didn't translate to the screen, because I've got a lot of questions.
I don't really have questions. I just have issues with how the movie was played out.
And I think that maybe if we read the story it was based on, that some of these questions that I have would be answered.
Give me an example.
What kind of a nickname is Cornbread?
Yeah.
There has to be an explanation for why he has received this name.
Well, just like Pooter and Cooley High, we're never going to know. We have to accept it.
And the character of One Eye, he doesn't really do anything in this, but I'm sure he's much more involved in the story. He has to be.
Yeah, he just serves as an example of how straight arrow Cornbread is, or at least how everyone wants him to be.
No, he is. It's kind of annoying how straight arrow Cornbread is.
Well, that's the problem I have with it, is that Cornbread is too good to be true, number one.
He's a cartoon character.
He is. And number two, it took me reading about it to understand that the neighborhood rioted because they were so invested in Cornbread, because we're given really nothing showing him interacting with anybody in the neighborhood except for One Eye and Mr. Jenkins.
And Wilford.
And, well, obviously Wilford's his cousin. But, I mean, the whole neighborhood decides to beat up cops on Cornbread's behalf, but we don't know what he means to the neighborhood. We see very few people interact with him, and all those interactions seem kind of stilted and stagey.
Right. The first third of the movie, we see it all basically through Cornbread's point of view. And
then he dies.
He dies, but before that, he seems so vain.
Yeah, he's got a big head. I mean, he's, 18? And he's going to get this big basketball scholarship? He deserves to have a lot of pride in what he's done.
Can you imagine if Coach Cheese had that kind of attitude in Cooley High? He wouldn't have had any friends.
Probably not. And we don't see that Cornbread has friends. We just see him hanging out with Earl and Wilford. They're little kids. He doesn't really have any friends his own age. But he's so, well, you said cartoonish. He's just this figurehead. He doesn't really exist as a person. He's just a concept. And the concept is just too good to be true. He's not a human being.
And maybe he was fleshed out more in the story that this is based on. The Hog Butcher was the book they reprinted with the title Cornbread, Earl and Me.
And it just would have been good to see him interact with other people in the neighborhood. We don't really meet a lot of people. Instead, we just get these stilted conversations. Mr. Wilson saying, "Oh, we need you so much. We can't let anything happen to you."
Well, the story isn't Cornbread's story. It's the story of what happens after he's killed.
Right.
But it would be helpful to have him be more of a character, just as a viewer in the audience, to see why he represents what he does to these characters, rather than just saying, yeah, he's a good basketball player and he's going places. So that's something we can all strive to do. Good for him.
I do see how his parents are affected, and Wilford too, and Wilford's mom, Sarah. That part rings true. And I think those are the best performances in the movie. Obviously, Rosalind Cash, we've seen her just last week.
Yeah, she was in Monkey Hustle.
And Madge Sinclair and Stack Pierce as Sam and Leona, Cornbread's parents. I thought their performances were very good. And Lawrence Fishburne was amazing in this movie.
Oh, he's very good. Wonder whatever happened to him.
I bet he could have gone places. As child actors go, he's probably one of the best I've ever seen. And the scene where he's running up and down the street saying that Cornbread died, it felt so real. I gasped. I don't know, kind of getting goosebumps just thinking about how well he played that scene.
My least favorite character in this movie is the score.
Oh,
gosh. The music is awful. It's so schmaltzy.
And intrusive.
Everything's quiet, and then it comes up just before a big speech or something. And you can't help but notice it, and you're really not supposed to notice it. It's supposed to subliminally help you feel what you're supposed to feel, but it kind of punches you in the gut when it's telling you to feel this way instead. The speech that I did in the synopsis where he's going, "No, mama, this is food," about his basketball. I mean, that's corny stuff he's saying anyway, but the score going behind it doesn't help.
No, and we saw in one of the reviews that the music was better suited for a disco. And then the theme song.
The theme song's kind of fun. It's catchy.
It's catchy, but it's kind of silly too.
It's very silly. I've got the lyrics here. I don't remember the tune at all, so you don't have to hear me sing it.
Uh-huh.
In the heat of the night, hear the bump of the ball on the floor of the court, on the sides of the hall. He's cornbread.
Cornbread.
He's cornbread.
Cornbread. I'm not doing it every single time.
Man. He's a man made of steel. Was no sucker to buy, was a giant in his field. Not a trick for one eye. He's cornbread.
Cornbread.
He's cornbread.
Oh, God. Get on with it.
He's the man with the plan. He's got a basketball in his hand. Well, he's cornbread.
Cornbread.
He's cornbread. He's the man with the plan. Got the whole world in his hand. He's cornbread.
Cornbread.
He's cornbread. He's going to school, not looking to fight. Not a neighborhood fool. Got no gun or a knife. He's cornbread.
Cornbread.
He's cornbread. He's a dream to his mom. He's a man to his pop. He's an idol to kids, and he loves soda pop. He's cornbread.
Cornbread.
He's cornbread. And then it repeats. He's the man with a plan. He's got a basketball in his hand. He's cornbread.
See what I'm saying? It's just so silly.
But it's really difficult to get out of your head. But apparently it works because I don't remember the tune.
Yeah, so it's annoying, but I understand they have to have it there.
The song was better than the score. The soundtrack album has that song twice. It's the first and last track. So I don't know if the lyrics are slightly different when they play it the first time through. I didn't compare it.
I don't think it is.
But the rest is just the score. So I don't think I'll be trying to track down the soundtrack album.
No, it's pretty annoying. And the song does a better job of explaining who Cornbread is than the movie does, though. So that's kind of not great. We get more information on Cornbread from the theme song than we do from his interactions with others in the movie.
No, I guess it doesn't really matter, though, beyond the fact that he's a really good basketball player and he's going to get out of this neighborhood because of that.
Well, that's why I say there's a germ of a really good movie here, because it's the aftermath that really concerns us. Cornbread is like in the first half hour of the movie. The second half hour of the movie is the police and the police responding and trying to intimidate the witnesses. And then the last half hour is the inquest. And it's the middle part that's pretty interesting, where we get real conflict and character growth.
And then in the third act, when we see the results of that and how it affected different people, a lot of these people aren't speaking at all because they're scared.
Right. And that was very realistic. What I thought wasn't realistic was the fact that all Wilford had to do was testify. And the coroner's like, "Oh, okay, I believe you." And then he's ready to throw the book at Danaher for doing the witness intimidation, when he had just been so cruel to Earl, who just sat on the stand and sobbed. He really was. He was mean to Earl. But he listens to Wilford explain everything. And to be fair, Lawrence Fishburne did a great job with this scene. He explained it very matter-of-factly, without emotion, what happened. And even though he didn't get emotional, it was emotional to watch him do this.
And speaking of Earl, this is Tia Turner as the third character we've seen him play in an AIP movie.
Very different.
All from this year. This is the first one. So we watched them in the reverse order that they came out. And he looks like he's a year younger.
He's a year older, actually, than Lawrence Fishburne.
I mean, he looks like a year younger than we've seen him before.
Oh, he does. He looks very much like a little kid here. And he acts like one.
He's not the smart aleck we've seen in the other two films.
Yeah, he's not this fast operator that he was in Friday Foster and in Bucktown.
And as for the character of Earl, I don't understand what he did to warrant getting his name in the title.
He's just sort of the naysayer to everything that Wilford says.
I feel this is a lot more than this character deserved.
Yeah, the title could have made it a lot more dramatic. It makes it sound like sort of a fun buddy comedy when it's not. And all the players don't deserve equal billing in the title. This is really Wilford's movie. And what's happening to him is the most important part of the movie.
Yeah. His relationship with Earl is they argue all the time. They're always bickering. They're friends, but they don't get along that well.
The part at the end where Wilford teaches Earl how to shoot, that was a good scene. I like that scene.
And that kind of thing could have happened a lot earlier if Earl was just an easier person to get along with.
He's very contrary. He doesn't want to believe anything Wilford says. And it's kind of hard to see how they are friends because it sounds like he just got here from Mississippi. Or at least he's always talking about it.
Well, when you're kids, it's a lot easier. You make friends with the other kids in the neighborhood, and there don't seem to be a lot.
No, there aren't. A lot of kids play basketball, but not a lot of kids actually hang with either Cornbread or Wilford and Earl.
Another thing that may have been handled better in the book, I really would kind of like to read the story just to see if they did a better job, because the way that the story is put together, it's kind of angering. I mean, the material is supposed to make you angry that this kind of thing is happening anyway with the police intimidation and everything that's going on. But I think the way that the film handles it makes it even worse.
It does. This is a serious subject. Extrajudicial execution by the police has been in the news constantly in the past 10 years at least, for good reason, and it should be. And the way that it plays out here is just wrapped up so neatly and tidily, and it shouldn't be.
At least one of the officers is going to have to face consequences. At least they imply that much.
Yeah, but it's not the shooters. It's the guy who tried to cover up for the shooters. And to be honest, I didn't believe any of that. I don't think anything's going to happen to anybody here. It never does. This is not a problem that has been solved. It's a problem that's been exacerbated in the past 50 years. This is a 50-year-old movie.
And what was interesting, and I don't know if they were just trying to pull their punches or what, but it was the white cop that was having doubts about what they did.
Yeah, but I think they explained that pretty well when they had Benjamin talk to Larry in the hospital.
Well, they had to.
Obviously, but I think that was a good scene. And I think that getting the two of them to talk to each other about their history, their experiences, and their different perspectives on the people in the neighborhood, I thought that was really important. And that made sense. And I think if you focus on Larry and John and their transformation, that adds to the benefit of the movie. The cartoonish, mustache-twirling villain, Sergeant Danaher, does not add anything to this movie. It's so ridiculous how evil he is. And then how he gets his justice in the end. I don't believe any of it.
Well, up to the end, I thought that he was the most realistic character in the whole movie.
Well, I can believe that the police do intimidation of witnesses. It's just the way that it happens here is not realistic to me. It doesn't feel like a natural scene. It's like something that a middle schooler wrote.
Where do you think the story takes place? Is this somewhere in the Los Angeles area? Or?
Yeah, I believe that. I think that some of the signage that we saw indicates that it's LA. It's probably, in one of the more ethnic neighborhoods.
So the reason I ask is because they kind of interchanged the term soda and pop, which is a regional thing. And you don't find an area that uses them both. You might call it soda pop. You might call it soda. You might call it pop. And a lot of places, according to the maps that I see, it's Coke.
Well, Earl's from Mississippi. So not everyone who lives in California grew up in California. So there are regional differences. I used to call it pop when I lived in the Midwest, and I've kind of transitioned to calling it soda since I moved to Arizona. So that could happen. I don't think that that's really important.
But I will say, having grown up in the Midwest, that when they did say pop, they pronounced it right.
Well, like I said, just because you live in an area doesn't mean you're from that area. And I grew up in Indiana, and I didn't have the same accent as people one county south of me. So just being part of a state doesn't really guarantee anything. There's city versus rural. I just think that there's a whole plethora of ways to say things. And that there might be people saying it one way in a neighborhood. It's not going to be everybody.
Well, so far, I think we're in agreement that the acting is really good here.
Yeah, Rosalind Cash is very good. Her handling of Wilford after the shooting was so amazing. She's trying so hard to get her boy back on track. She knows something terrible has happened, and he had to see it. And she's doing a fantastic job trying to rescue him, basically, trying to keep him from giving in to despair and being unable to see a future for himself. And the way that it happens in the movie is just so sweet. They're just walking around talking. There's no big intervention where she's trying to lecture him. She's just kind of talking to him as a person, an older person, like he's an adult, and just trying to encourage him.
What about the storyline where she's got the bad heart? That's another thing that I think was probably explained better in the book and is just shorthanded for the film.
Well, they needed something that the police could use as leverage over her, and that's what they had.
And that's
what they came up with.
That's all it serves in this movie is.
Right.
Yeah, she's on welfare because of this. And
she's not really supposed to be on welfare. She doesn't have a heart condition. That's the thing. She just can't or won't work for whatever reason. Maybe she doesn't want to leave her son home alone while she works 3 jobs. I mean, that's what I would imagine. But nothing gets explained. And I think we just shorthand a lot of this. And that's why it feels very much like an after-school special for me. It's very simplistic.
Between that, some of the dialogue, particularly Cornbread's dialogue, is...
Yeah.
It's as schmaltzy as the score.
Keith Wilkes is not a good actor.
He seems like a nice guy.
He does seem like a great guy, and I definitely think he's a fantastic basketball player. I just don't know why he got cast in this movie.
I think it's because he has an unusual look. He's got really light eyes.
He's very tall.
He's very tall. That had that going for him, too.
And, I mean, yeah, he seems like a real person, but usually you want...
He didn't seem like a real person. I think that was the problem.
Oh, yeah. What I mean is, like, he seemed like a civilian pulled in off the streets to act in a movie. And he doesn't seem like an actor because he's not an actor. He didn't do anything after this except for one TV appearance and then some sports stuff. And I can see why. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities here because there's a lot of good stuff mixed in.
There is a lot of good stuff. The cinematography, I think, is really good in this movie.
Yeah, there were a couple of scenes that I thought were... I think this is the scene where Cornbread dies and the riot starts. The cuts between that, I didn't really care for that because we couldn't really see what was happening. They were cutting to the light on top of the police car flashing, and then they cut back to the beating, and then they cut away to something else. And that would seem like maybe the editing wasn't that great, but yeah, the cinematography is good.
And they cut away to Officer Larry with little pieces of glass pellets poking out of his face. If that happened every time a windshield shattered...
Yeah, I know.
There'd be a lot more blind people in the world.
Yeah, that didn't happen in any of my car accidents.
But in terms of cinematography, particularly in the courtroom stuff, they keep getting really tight.
Yeah.
And it's really, really well done.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, there's so much going on in this movie. They just insisted on inserting some of these really ridiculous scenes. The scene where Sarah comes out to stab Danaher. Oh my God. She looked like a rabid animal. It was just so ridiculous.
Oh, and when Cornbread is shot and then the orange soda bottle flies through the air.
Yeah.
That was a little overdramatic, I think.
Yeah. So I just wish I could redo this movie. I think I would give it a different title. Maybe I'd call it Hit the Open Man. I think I would cast a real actor to play Cornbread. Go into his background a little more. Like, why does everybody think he's so great? Because he seemed a little like a blank canvas to me.
Well, maybe we have to go back to the book and see what's missing from the film.
Yeah. But a lot of the stuff I wouldn't touch, like anything with Wilford.
I would give One Eye something to do.
I thought the only thing that he did was disappear when the police were about to come around.
And we never saw him again.
No, they talked about him.
And we never saw Charlie again either, come to think of it.
Yeah, we didn't see Charlie again, but that's okay because Sarah's moved on. She's got herself a lawyer.
Well, maybe. We don't really see anything solid developing there. There's an implication of something possibly germinating there, but...
Yeah, but I think she's going to like him a lot better than she likes Charlie, the horny guy.
The horny guy without a job, yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. Benjamin can pay the rent. But he's a good guy, and Moses Gunn as Benjamin was very good too. In the tradition of movie lawyers, you know, he's wise, he's kind, he's forceful. He did a great job with the role, and I really liked him in this movie. And I can see why Rosalind liked him too.
When they're going through these reports and they talk about a shiny object in his hand, nobody mentions a basketball. He's always got a basketball in his hand. Right. And that's going to be more noticeable than a soda bottle.
I think so too. And
he couldn't really dribble because it was raining and a little harder to control. Your hands are slippery. I can understand that. But he's still running with a basketball.
Yeah. He was dribbling it as he went.
But he was dribbling it?
Yeah.
I guess that's in character. Sure.
He always, when does he not dribble a basketball?
When he's bouncing it off the wall.
Well, there you go. I think he bounced it off some of the buildings that he walked past too.
He did.
So they never really explained why the cops should have shot him in the first place. I mean, they later amended their story that they thought he had a gun, but I guess the person they were chasing did shoot somebody. So assuming that he had a gun.
Right, but they didn't even have a description of what this person was wearing.
No.
They were chasing somebody with a gray sweatshirt. They didn't know that was the right guy. It probably was. We don't know.
It might have been.
It probably was.
But he wasn't charging at anybody with whatever he had in his hand. Cornbread, I mean. Wasn't actually physically threatening anybody. He was just walking across the street. He wasn't even going that fast, despite what everyone else said.
The one thing is, it did look like he turned around when they said police, and then he turns around and starts running.
Well, he probably assumed they weren't talking to him.
Yeah, probably.
That's what I would do. Like, I wouldn't assume the cops were chasing me. I don't know. Obviously, it's not right to shoot suspects. That's not the police's job. Their job is to catch them and bring them to trial. And so that's very problematic. They didn't really address that in the movie, though. That's not really what it was about. Sam and Leona were quick to say it was just a case of mistaken identity. Like, you should have shot the other guy. But maybe the other guy didn't do it either. We never saw him holding a gun when he was standing in the background. He stood right behind the cops as the cops were examining Cornbread's body. And then eventually he's like, I should get out of here. But should they have shot either one of those guys? I don't think so.
Not under the circumstances that we've seen.
And they'd lost sight of the person they were chasing. And it was raining. We said it was raining, but we didn't describe how rainy it was.
It was a pretty torrential rain.
Imagine you're in the shower, except for it's on the entire street. It's like that much rain. So their vision was obscured. It was loud. It was noisy. There were lots of people. And despite all this rain, there were tons of people walking around. But anyway, it was just a scene that didn't call for someone to be shot in the back. But the movie doesn't really address that.
Well, we wouldn't have had a movie if that hadn't happened, so I can understand why.
Oh, yeah, sure, it happens all the time. It never stopped happening. It's just that the movie doesn't address the fact that they shouldn't have shot the other guy either. You know, they make Sam and Leona seem like they're very magnanimous by just wanting the admission of guilt and an apology and just clearing Cornbread's name. That's all they wanted. But honestly, they could have got a bundle. And they deserved it.
So, Cheryl, it sounds like you have some very strong feelings about this film. How would you rate Cornbread and Earl and Me, given those strong feelings, using our AIP scale, where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic?
I think I know where I'm obviously going to give it the grade I'm going to give it, but it's unfortunate because parts of this movie deserve an A. Lawrence Fishburne's performance and some of the other performances that we mentioned are A material, but parts of it are pathetic. The parts of the script that the ending was wrapped up too patly. The scenes where the police are intimidating the witnesses, where Sarah is trying to stab the cop, that's just inane stuff. This movie deserves better. So I think I have to take the A parts and the P parts and average it out and give it an I. What do you think?
I agree. There's so many good ingredients here. Like I said, I love the cinematography. The acting is, for the majority of this, superb.
With a few notable exceptions.
With a few notable exceptions, yeah. But it's things like the score.
Yeah.
That is just grating.
It's so annoying.
The Cornbread song is bad, but it's fun bad. So I can go with it.
Yeah. I think they should have left it off the ending, though.
I think what really hurts it is the stuff that's not there that has to be in the book, because I don't see how the story could have even been published with so many unanswered questions.
Yeah.
So I think the problem is the adaptation is what really hurts this film. But I don't know, so I have to judge the film on its own.
You would anyways.
Yeah, I would. So I'm going to agree this is an I movie. There's just not enough here to give it the A that the subject matter deserves.
Exactly. And we'd love to know what you think of our podcast or our treatment of this movie, Cornbread, Earl and Me, or anything else that you'd like to tell us. And the way to do that is to go to our website, AIPpod.com. That's AIPPOD.com, where you can find out more about the movies, see posters, trailers, promotional materials, and the like. And like I said, get in touch with us and give us your thoughts on this movie or any of the other movies that we've covered. AIPPOD.com.
And that's it for this episode of the American International Podcast. I'm Jeff Markin.
And I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in. Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.